Jesus Christ is the most influential person to ever walk the earth. How well do you know him? In the new book, 52 Weeks with Jesus, Dr. James Merritt leads you on a transformative journey, sharing what he has learned over a lifetime. This book will help you fall in love with the one who changed everything. 52 Weeks with Jesus is available now through Touching Lives. Order your copy by calling 800-413-1131 or go to touchinglives.org.
Today on Touching Lives.
Marriage is when you look someone in the eye and you say, I love you for real. I love you with a love that comes from God himself. And I promise you, if you'll take me and if you'll marry me, if you'll be my wife or you'll be my husband, I don't care what we go through, I will never stop loving you.
With hope and encouragement for life, this is Touching Lives with James Merritt.
I thought it would be a great way to wrap up this series by talking about the one thing that we all know that is absolutely necessary for a marriage not only to hold together, but for a couple to be happy together. I mean, it's one thing to get together. It's kind of one thing to stay together. It's another thing to stay together and be happy about it. And the one thing that we know that's necessary is love. Because a loveless marriage is a lifeless marriage. When love goes out of the marriage, life goes out of the marriage. And when you talk about a knot that will stay tied, really what we've been trying to do over the last several Sundays is really answer this question. Can two people who fall in love before they get married stay in love after they get married? And it sounds like a rhetorical question with the obvious answer, yes, but I would say to you, well, it all depends on what you mean by love. So this is a very practical message. You'll be glad you came today. I told you this is the one message I didn't want anybody to miss. So whether you're married or you're engaged or you're single and you're dating, so if you've got a spouse or fiance or a boyfriend or a girlfriend or whatever, you're going to really learn a lot today, and you're going to be able to evaluate both what you call love, is it the real thing, and the person that says they love you, is it really the real deal? So I want you to write down a little statement. If you're taking any notes, I want you to write down a statement. We're going to fill in the blank for you. If I were to come to you and I were to say this, if my love is real, then how would you fill in that blank? If my love is real, I'm talking about what God says is real love. If my love is real, then, and what we're going to do is we're going to look right in this chapter, right exactly on what God told Paul to write down, and we're going to find out what God says love makes love real. Okay, number one, if my love is real, I will show how love looks. If my love is real, if my love for Teresa is real, you should see, without me saying a word, you should be able to see and say, boy, he really loves her. Now, Paul gets down to the nitty-gritty of what real love looks like. And I'll tell you what's kind of interesting. He uses more negative statements than he does positive statements. He spends more time telling us what love is not than he does what love is. He spends more time telling us what love does not do than what it does do. And so, as we look at these characteristics, we're going to go through them real quick, but as we look at these characteristics, I'd like for you, if you're taking notes, to write down a couple of questions, and every time I go through one of these qualities, I want you to ask yourself this question, about your love for your spouse or your fiance or your boyfriend or your girlfriend. Here's the questions I want you to be asking. Number one, how does my love measure up with this quality? If that's what real love is, how real is my love? And then number two, so how's my love working out for me? Because see, some of you are going to find one of the reasons why you're having such marital difficulties is you don't have real love. And you just watch. We're going to just kind of blow through these and take them one at a time. And remember now, we're talking about real love. Here's what we find. All right, here we go. Love is patient. Verse 4, love is patient. Now, it's kind of interesting that Paul begins by talking about that very word. Paul said, if love was like a fleet of ships, the flagship would be patience. Love is patient. You know, we have a term in English, we call it being short-tempered. You know, someone who loses their temper real quickly or whatever, they're short-tempered. They have a short fuse. You know, some of you may be married to someone like, man, the least little thing, man, just sets them off, right? Well, Paul uses a very interesting word for patience. It's actually a combination of two words. It's the word themia, which gives us the word thermometer, and it's the word macro, not micro, but macro, that means long. And when you put those two things together, love is long-tempered. In other words, love has a long fuse. It takes a long time for love to boil over. As a matter of fact, love not only has a long fuse, love has a very short memory. And if you ever kind of get that fuse lit, it takes a very short time to put it out. Love is patient. Love is long-tempered. So, question for all of you. How does your love measure up to that? How's that working out for you? Here's another one. Love is kind. Very interesting word. Only time it's ever used in all the New Testament. And all that word simply refers to is the way you treat your spouse, the way you talk to your spouse. Mark Twain said, kindness is a language that deaf people can hear and blind people can see. So the way you treat your spouse, are you kind to your spouse? The way you talk to your spouse, are you kind to your spouse? How's your love measuring up? How's it working out for you? Here's another one. It does not envy. Love's not jealous. Teresa and I were talking before we got married about, the kind of marriage we wanted to have and the kind of things we would expect out of each other. And I made a promise to her. I said, I promise you the day that we marry, I will never, ever be jealous of you, ever. And I have kept that promise because I know there's nothing that will poison the well of a marriage quicker than jealousy. And all jealousy is just a disguise for distrust. If you're jealous of someone, it doesn't matter why. If you're jealous, what you're really saying to that person is, I don't trust you. When you're out of my sight, I don't believe the best about you, I think the worst. James Dobson put it well. If you're kind of battling with jealousy, here's a word for you. James Dobson said, if you love something, you can set it free. If it's yours, it will come back to you. If it doesn't come back to you, it never was yours. Now, there's another version that says, if you love something, set it free. If it doesn't come back to you, track it down and beat it to death. Now, that's not love. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about. Love, you like that, didn't you, hon? Okay, love releases. Jealousy possesses. Jealousy distrusts. Love does trust. Love says, I don't worry about you. I'm not worried about who you are, where you are, who you're with, who you're talking to. I trust you. How does your love measure up? How's your love working out for you? Watch this one. He said, love does not boast. Now, you're talking about something that will really grate on nerves in a marriage. Some of you are married to someone right now, and you have one thing in common with your spouse. You both love him or her. They love to brag about what a great spouse they are. And they love to brag about all that they do. I do all the housework. I bring home all the bacon. I pay all the bills. If I want something done, I've got to do it. If I want something done, I've got to do it right. And so they're the kind of people that they focus on all of their good points. They never focus on yours. Paul said, real love's not arrogant. If you have a problem admitting when you're wrong, you've got an arrogant kind of love. And if you've got an even bigger problem in apologizing when you are wrong, you've got a very arrogant love. Paul says love does not boast. Love is not arrogant. How does your love measure up to that? How's your love working out for you? Love does not dishonor others. I love another way. Another way to translate this is love is not rude or ill-mannered. Love never cuts the other person down. Love never cuts the other person short. Love, it doesn't interrupt when the other person is talking. And it doesn't ignore the other person when the other person is trying to talk. And you know this, and we've all been guilty of it. I have to battle it, but there's nothing more dishonoring and rude than to just interrupt someone or cut someone off. Because what you're really saying is, I don't care what you've got to say, what I've got to say is more important than what you're saying. Paul says, love doesn't do that. How's your love measured up? How's it working out for you? Here's another one. Love is not self-seeking. Or to put it another way, you ready for this? Love doesn't insist on getting its way all the time. Love doesn't say it's my way or the highways. If anything defines real love, it is a selfless love. By the way, everything we're going to be talking about, you know what you're reading in this chapter? You're reading a picture of Jesus. This is the way Jesus loves us. Jesus had a selfless love. When Jesus went to the cross, what did he say to the Father? He said, Father, if it were up to me, I'd want this cup to pass, but not my will, but yours be done. And when Jesus died for us on the cross, he was saying to every one of us, I'm putting you ahead of me. I'm putting what you need ahead of what I want. I'm willing to do that because that's what love does. Real love never asks the question, what can you do for me? Real love asks the question, what can I do for you? So how's your love measure up to that? And how's your love working out for you? Listen to this one. It is not easily angered, and we've already dealt with that. I love this one. Some of you need to hear this. It keeps no record of wrongs. Some of you are married to spouses. When they get upset, they don't get hysterical, they get historical. Don't clap. Dear God, don't do that. Lord, help us. I'm not going to look over there for a while. Love, listen, love doesn't keep a ledger of bad deeds. You know one of the things, and I'm just being honest, you just hate, you'll say, well, listen, honey, I'm trying to help you here. And they'll say, well, let me tell you what you did. And you're going, gosh, when did I do that? It was 1983, August the 3rd. And you're going, are you kidding me? That's 38 years ago. Come on. I mean, 28 years. Give me a break here. Paul said, look, love doesn't keep a list in his back pocket to pull out whatever you want to remind someone of what they did wrong. Love not only has a long fuse, it has a short memory. Love doesn't keep a record of the wrong someone's done to you, and it doesn't keep a record of the right you've done for somebody else. So to put it real simply, guys and gals, love doesn't hold a grudge. Love doesn't deal in bitterness. Love is quick to forgive and quick to forget. I love what C.S. Lewis said about forgiveness. He's so true. C.S. Lewis said, everybody says forgiveness is a lovely thing to do until they have something to forgive. Isn't that true? And yet Paul said, that's what love does. How does your love measure up to that? How's your love working out for you? And then finally, he says in verse 6, love does not delight in evil, but watch this, it rejoices with the truth. Now, of all the things Paul wrote, that was kind of hard to understand. What did Paul mean when Paul said, love rejoices with the truth? Love is happy when the truth is told. Now, listen, this is hard. When you really love someone, two things will be true of you. When you really love someone, you're willing to tell him or her the truth when they need to hear it, even if it hurts them. And if you really love someone, you're willing to hear the truth from them when you need to hear it, even if it hurts you. Paul said, love rejoices with the truth. So how does your love measure up, and how is your love working out for you? You show me a marital knot that's tied with those kinds of strands, patience, kindness, doesn't take into account a wrong done, quick to forgive, quick to forget, long fused. I will show you a love that will tie a knot that can't come untied. If your love is real, if my love is real, we will show it by how love looks. I'll show you something else. I'll also show it by how love lives. Because listen to what Paul says in verse 7. And by the way, verse 7 makes perfect sense when you read verses 4 through 6. He says in verse 7, love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Now there's one word in the Greek language that's used there 4 times. It's 2 words in English, 1 word in Greek. It's the word panta, which we translate all things. And you're very familiar with that word. Pantheism is the belief that God is in all things. You have a pantry in your house. That's where all of your food is stored. A panacea is a cure for all illnesses. It means all things. And what Paul is saying is, you talk about being strong. Paul says, when it comes to all the things that you face in your marriage, when it comes to all the things you found out about your spouse after you got married, you didn't know before you got married, and you don't like, when it comes to all the things that are going to attack your marriage, Paul said, here's what real love will do. Couples who stay in love, stay in love. Couples who stay in love, stay in Love. Because love, he said, will do 4 things. Now look at this. It bears all things. You know what that word bear means? It means to put up with. That's what it means. Now let me just tell you, if you're married, you'll find this out after about the first day. There are things, if you want your marriage to last, you got to put up with. There are a lot of things, Teresa, she's got to put up with to stay married to me. What Paul's point is, that's what you do. Real love doesn't look over the faults of your spouse. It overlooks the faults of your spouse. Real love says, how can I find a way that both of us can have a win-win situation in this situation? It bears all things. Love believes all things. Now let me tell you what that means. It means you choose to believe the best about your spouse. You don't assume the worst. Some of the worst marriages I've ever seen have this problem. The spouse always assumes the worst, never believes the best. If you really want to have a happy marriage, quit trying to find the bad in your spouse. There's plenty there. Nobody's perfect. Look for the good. Don't gripe about what's bad in your spouse. Be grateful for what is good about your spouse. Be positive, not negative. Love hopes all things. This is really big. Let me tell you what Paul meant by that. You say, my spouse will never change. My marriage will never get better. I may as well throw in the towel and hit the divorce court. And Paul says, love doesn't do that. Love hopes all things. Oh, but you don't understand. My marriage is hopeless. You don't understand. As long as there is a God in heaven, nothing is hopeless. Nothing is hopeless. So when you really believe there's a God in heaven who's in control, you can get up every day and say, Lord, I don't know how long it's going to take. I don't know what's going to happen, but I do know this. You know where he needs to be changed. You know where I need to be changed. You know where she needs to be changed. You know where I need to be changed. You work on me. I'm going to hope and trust you'll work on him. And then finally he says, love endures all things. That means love takes the long view and not the short view. It keeps the big picture in mind. Real love gets up every day and says, I'm not quitting. I'm going to work through this. I'm going to hang in here. It takes seriously those words, till death do us part. Let me tell you something. You cannot kill a love. You cannot kill a love that bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. Paul said, that's the way love looks. See, and by the way, you know what you're reading when you read those words, it bears, believes, and hopes all things? All that is another way of the way you vowed to do what you vowed to do when you got married. You remember when you got married and you took a vow like this? You know, do you take this woman or this man, you know, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health? You remember doing that? What you were really saying was, I promise I'm going to bear all things, believe all things, hope all things, endure all things. For better, for worse, richer, poorer, sickness and in health. Marriage is not multiple choice. It's not like the guy that stood up and the guy, you know, the pastor said, do you take this one for better, for worse, sickness and in health, you know, richer, for poor? He thought it was multiple choice. He said, I'll take richer, better, and health. And she said, sounds good to me too, okay? No. There's a church, you'll love this, there's a church in Washington State, started out 14 years ago, just a few people. It grew to more than 4,000 people. When the pastor was asked in one of the most secular, godless, spiritualist states in the Union, how did you grow a church to that size in an area like this? He said, I'm convinced it's because we required our people that joined this church, they had to make one commitment and they had to sign it. This is the commitment you had to make to join that church. Listen to this. You will never knowingly suffer at my hands. I will never say anything or do anything knowingly to hurt you. I will always come in every circumstance, seek to help and support you. If you're down and I can lift you up, I'll do that. If you need something and I have it, I'll share it with you. If I need to, I'll give it to you. No matter what I find out about you, no matter what happens in the future, either good or bad, my commitment to you will never change, and there is nothing you can do about it. Now, you build that kind of commitment, that kind of wall of love around your marriage, it can protect it from any attack. So if my love is real, I'll show it. I'll show how love looks. And I'll show how love lives. And I'll show how love lasts. This is the last thing, we're done. I save this for last because I think it's the best. It's the 3 words that Paul says about love in verse 8. It's kind of his summary. If you really want to know what love is and what really makes love real, here's what Paul says in verse 8. He said, love never fails. Never. Never means never. And by the way, what else could you say about the kind of love we just talked about? I mean, you show me a love that's patient, and kind, and doesn't keep a record of wrongs done, and doesn't envy, and is not jealous, and a love that bears, believes, hopes, and trusts. How can that kind of love fail? And beyond that, let me tell you how I know that real love never fails. God is love, and God never fails. So you folks that took logic, A, B, C, if God is love, and if God never fails, then real love never fails. So I got a word for some of you out there, and you're sitting there and you're saying, I just have one problem about my marriage. What's your problem? I just don't love him anymore. I just got one problem, Pastor, in my marriage. I just don't love her anymore. Well, if you sat down with the Apostle Paul and you said, my problem is I don't love her, my problem is I don't love him, here's what Paul would say to you. Then your love's not real. Oh yeah, my love's real. No, your love's not real. Because love never fails. Well, my love didn't last. My love failed. Paul would say, wasn't real. You may have thought it was real, wasn't real. Because real love never fails. No, by the way, while we're in the neighborhood, let me just say this. I get kind of nauseated sometimes. I get an itch I can't even find to scratch when I hear people say this. They'll say something like, I just don't believe in marriage because, you know, I don't need a piece of paper to be committed to somebody. Let me let you in on a little secret. Marriage has never been about a piece of paper. They didn't have paper in Jesus' days. Marriage is when you look someone in the eye and you say, I love you for real. I love you with a love that comes from God himself. And I promise you, if you'll take me and if you'll marry me, and if you'll be my wife or you'll be my husband, I don't care what we go through, I will never stop loving you. That kind of love will go on to say, I want that paper. I want to make legal what God has made spiritual. I have such a commitment. As a matter of fact, let me turn it around. I want to be careful how I say that. I don't want to sound condescending. I want to use the word moron. I'm not going to do that. Help me, Rhonda. If you really love someone, why wouldn't you want that piece of paper? Help me here. Give me one reason. If you really love that person, give me one reason why you wouldn't want that paper. So let me just tell you this quick story, and it's short and we're done, because you'll love it. I never heard of this guy until the other day. His name's Lee Ielpe. Lee Ielpe was a firefighter in New York City. He worked for the New York City Police Department, Fire Department for 26 years. When the call came September 11, 2001, he went with his unit and they went down to 2001, and he thought that day he was going down to fight a fire, but he didn't know how his life was about to change because his son, Jonathan, was also a firefighter. But his son was in one of the twin towers when it fell and his son was killed. Well, firefighters are very loyal, and they have a code that when one perishes in the line of duty, that body is left until a firefighter who knows that person and can identify the body can literally, physically retrieve it and bring it back. Lee Ielpe made this his personal mission in life. And beginning September the 12th, every day, he went down to that graveyard of cement and smoke and concrete and steel and dead bodies. And every day from dawn till dusk, he pulled and he shoveled and he pushed and he looked. Until on December the 11th, 3 months after his son died, he pulled back a piece of rubble, and it was the body of his son. And that dad, not letting anybody else do it, that dad tenderly reached down and picked up the lifeless body of his son and took it back to be buried. And I read that story, and I thought to myself, how could a dad do that? How could a dad go down to that 16-acre graveyard day after day after day after day after day and want to discover the very thing he did not want to discover? And I thought about this verse. It's because love never fails. And that dad said, nobody loves that boy like I love that boy. And nobody's going to take that boy out but the dad that brought him into this world. And I'm telling you today, that's the kind of love that our Heavenly Father has for us. That's the kind of love that sent Jesus to die on the cross for us. And that is the kind of love that through the power of the Spirit of God, we can and should have for the one that we're married to, because if you have that kind of love, you'll love till death do you part.
Have you ever noticed that miserable people tend to stick together? And very seldom are they the source of good advice. If you find yourself struggling in your marriage today, don't commiserate with negative people. Call Touching Lives at 800-413-1131. We want to pray with you as you seek God's restoration of your marriage.
Jesus Christ is the most influential person to ever walk the earth. How well do you know him? In the new book, 52 Weeks with Jesus, Dr. James Merritt leads you on a transformative journey, sharing what he has learned over a lifetime. This book will help you fall in love with the one who changed everything. 52 Weeks with Jesus is available now through Touching Lives. Order your copy by calling 800-413-1131. 800-413-1131. Or go to touchinglives.org. 52 Weeks with Jesus. Fall in love with the one who changed everything.
Few things are as painful as a damaged relationship. And when that relationship is a marriage, it can be hard to find a place of hope. Through the ministry of Touching Lives, the message of hope through God's Word is available to anyone who wants to hear it. Because of our faithful partners, we can take that message around the globe.